Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, if you're not satisfied with your love or sex life, I want you to know that I get how painful it is. Sometimes it's hard to know what to do to change things up and get the results you want. But having spent 20 years as a dating and relationship coach, supporting thousands of men to have the relationships and sex they want, I know it's possible for you when you get the right kind of support. As a woman coach, I bring a unique advantage by helping you understand how women think and feel and why they say and do things that can be so frustrating for you. My specialty is being able to tell within minutes why you're losing attraction, trust, or respect from women, and how to turn that around. Even though you've likely been raised to think you should be a man who doesn't need any help, it just doesn't work that way because none of us were handed a guide to love or sex. So every month by application, I open my calendar to a few men for consultations. Men are amazed to walk away from these sessions feeling more confident in and out of the bedroom. Coaching isn't for everyone. I work with men who are willing to be honest about their role in the situations they've created. So if you're still playing the blame game, this isn't for you. But if you're ready to take action and have a love and sex life you feel great about, book a time to meet with me. Go to shanajamescoaching.com/consult and fill out the form to tell me more about you so we can set something up. That's shanajamescoaching.com/consult. Enjoy today's podcast. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today to talk about something that doesn't always have words put to it. And it's the topic of shutdown. And many men come to me, we all have different ways of protecting ourselves. Sometimes they're more expressive or explosive. Sometimes they're more internal, pulling away, distancing, going into a man cave or some other way of taking space. And today we're going to talk about shutdown. What happens with shutdown? What are some of the triggers? How do we get out of it? What do we do with it when that's happening? So I'm excited to have an amazing guest with us today, David Khalili, who is a therapist and founder of Rouse Relational Wellness, a center in San Francisco. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Shanna. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So do you want to say a little bit about how you got into therapy and started your center, and then we can talk about the topic of the day?
For sure, yeah. Hi everyone. I've been in sexual wellness for about 20 years and in mental health for about 15 years. Ranged from peer sex education at San Francisco State University to working in sex shops in Texas and in California and
Interesting
seeing
locations.
yeah, totally. You can, seeing the difference in laws and regulations on
Yeah.
sex toys between Texas and California and what we would do to kind of work around them and
Yeah.
the kind of tension that we would have around that was really interesting. But the similarities were the questions that people would ask coming into the shops
Hmm.
and, their concerns and their issues or their desires.
Do you have a sense
Uh,
like what some of the biggest or most common questions or concerns were?
yeah, I mean, it was definitely, how can we kind of take things to the next level? Like, how can we incorporate different tools, media, material to help us kind of find different parts of ourselves or find different parts of our desire or pleasure that seems really interesting or exciting to us. And then you would see the different levels of shyness, let's say, to
Uh-huh.
that desire. And
Yeah.
we would have some folks coming in with like the whole Unabomber outfit with, the hood and the sunglasses because they didn't want people
They
to
didn't
see
want to
that
be
they were buying.
seen. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually those guys, I would clock them as the prostate massager buyers because they were
Uh-huh.
really timid and shy about being seen buying something like that, which
Yeah.
is a shame
It's
because
such a
everyone,
shame.
yeah. Um, and then, after working in sex shops, I got my master's degree in sexuality studies. And then where I worked, my focus was on Middle Eastern queer folks and intersecting identity conflict.
Wow.
Also did a little work on kink and trauma. And then, I went to become a therapist with graduate school and training and hours and all that good stuff. Um, and that's been a good amount of time. I would say, yeah, 15 years. And about 3 years ago, I started Rouse because I really wanted to focus on sex and relationship therapy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to create a space where people can, our tagline is shame less, love more.
Yeah, I
And that's
love
like our big
that.
mission. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because we've seen the ways that many people are kind of impacted by shame. They
Right.
shut down, they react with anger, they isolate. And a lot
Pretty
of the
amazing.
reasons.
Yeah. I was just thinking it's pretty amazing when you imagine taking shame out of the picture, right? Like
Hmm.
what a completely different picture it is.
Yeah, what do you see when you take shame out?
Play and lightness and
Yeah.
creativity and connection and love and right, like collaboration. I mean, there's just
Hmm.
right. If you imagine not feeling bad or wrong about something, there's so
Yeah.
much more freedom.
Yeah. And exploration and curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started Rouse with that goal in mind, and I'm lucky enough to find wonderful providers to join the team that are also aligned with that mission. And many of us are queer identified, and all of us are doing our training in sex therapy and relationship therapy, and just really enjoying this line of work. So I'm
Great.
glad to be here and talking about working with men and just working with people and around sex and relationships.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's both fun and powerful, right? To hear about your history and your training and what you've
Mm,
studied and how you've studied it.
hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so as we're talking about shutdown, can you give us a description or a sense of, how do you describe shutdown? What is that thing that happens?
Yeah. So, clinically, the shutdown can be like a freeze response, as a trauma response. There's a great book called, and I'm looking at it right now, The Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving from Pete Walker. And
Mhm.
he talks about the variety of different trauma responses that we have, and one of them being the freeze response, where we just kind of our computer turns off, our brain turns off,
Yeah.
you know, and then it becomes some people can feel it like there's a warm, fuzzy sensation around them. They can't really see too well. They're going internal. Maybe they're feeling like a brewing of anger or
Mhm.
anxiety going on with it. And that's very much a trauma response, in the face of
Yeah.
conflict, in the face of shame, in the face of lots of things.
Yeah. I've also heard people describe that numbness or that kind of wall or right coldness, just
Hmm.
fuzziness. And I actually had an experience recently where I was feeling shock and it was almost like my body became solid, like this solid
Mm.
brick of almost ice or something, right? There's like all these different ways that actually when we
Yeah.
start paying attention to our body, it can
Yeah.
really, the physical manifestation and then right, not having a sense of being able to think clearly or being
Yeah.
able to relate. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then if there's pressure for you to share your mind, to speak your truth, and you're not really forming those words, or being able to verbalize your emotions too well, it can kind of like really stack on top of each other, and it becomes
Right.
overwhelming.
Right. And can become a source of conflict. And then there's more pressure. And then that can
Yeah.
build. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So freeze is one way. Would you call um other, like something that's more explosive, would you still call that shutting down or do you have a different way that you would, separate it?
Yeah, I would separate that out by saying, there's a shutdown in terms of like the connection and the communication with the anger, but
Yeah.
I would say it's more of like yeah, the fight response, the distancing behavior.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I learned that I learned that term from when I first adopted my dog and got a trainer, and she talked about his distancing behavior, and I was like, oh yeah, humans do that too.
For
Been a
sure.
useful term for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. So we're going to focus more on that, more the distancing, the freezing, the
Hmm.
what happens. And a lot of men, my clients have come to me um knowing that this happens to them and not having a sense of what to do about it or how to get out
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure you've seen the shame that they even experience that,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And I think people of all genders feel that shame, but I think there's
Yeah.
like this for some men, traditionally speaking, there's the pressure to perform, the pressure to know, the pressure to know right away.
Yep. Yep.
Um, not an allowance of learning or of getting something wrong and then learning from that, or
Right.
and so just that high stakes adds to that shutdown or that aggression because
Yeah.
it's, I don't know, get away from me, or let me think about it, get away from me, or it's not a problem, get away from me, sort of thing. Or they really do want to talk about it, but they just don't know how. And
Right.
yeah.
Can't access. I've been very surprised in the moments when I am working with someone and I say, okay, what would it be like for you to say, all right, I'm feeling a little confused, or I'm noticing like something's happening inside me. I don't quite know what it is. Like, give me a moment. I'm checking in with myself. And
Hmm.
how novel that is, right? Because there's that
Yeah.
sense of like, I'm supposed to know and I'm supposed to know now. And if
Right.
I don't know, for like you said, I think it applies to all genders, and there's a particular like I'm not manly, or I'm not
Yeah.
who I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think also when I work with couples, where at least one partner is a man, the feeling of, I want to give you this information, I want to protect you, or I want to provide this information. I do want to share with you about this stuff, but again, I don't know how. And then that leads into its own argument of, why do you keep asking me these things? Why do you keep, pressuring me? I'm trying to figure this out. And, that's when it's like that break is needed.
Yeah.
At least the 20-minute nervous system reset break to
Oh,
just kind
say
of
more about that.
normally.
Because I know, when I have different terms I use when people like the Gottmans use flooded or whatever, but is
Right.
there a specific 20-minute protocol that you have?
Not a protocol, but yeah, the Gottman's, kind of based off the Gottman's talking about, it takes 20 minutes to reduce, to kind of reset your nervous system. I definitely will offer different breathing exercises. If you are to breathe out longer than you breathe in, so you
Mm,
breathe in for 4 seconds through your nose, 6 seconds out through your mouth,
yeah.
that will slow down your heart rate. If sometimes people do better at just writing out their thoughts on their own beforehand. Um, there's another one where it's the compromising ovals that the Gottmans talk about, where
Mm,
if if it is an issue of compromise, then having them go separately, and there's one big oval and then a small oval in the middle. And the small oval in the middle is your inflexible area of
uh-huh.
compromise, and the one on the outside is the flexible. So it could be, keeping a clean home, and then the inflexible area is dishes are done, whatever. But the inflexible area is like the timing of the day, or what have you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Got it. Okay. So, right. Okay. So we've got some different ways that people can start to think about, all right, my nervous system, my body, my psychology, like something has gotten into a reactive state or a primal state or
Yeah.
a protective, contorted, right, tightened
Hmm.
state. And right. And this happens to all of us because
Yeah.
we're human in different ways.
Yeah.
And
But
there are
then,
things that we can do about it.
yeah. And I think specifically with men, the concept of soul murder by bell hooks, that um, really beautifully puts that, boys are the first victim of the patriarchy, because they're
Mm,
told that in order to belong, they have to fit into this small box that they're given,
yeah.
in the small box of accepted emotions and expressions. And over time, they learn directly and indirectly that the emotions outside of that, do not belong. And so they kill off those parts of themselves, and it gets calcified. And over time, that's part of, losing the emotional access.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do you see? Like, what do you see happens with your clients as a result? If you're working with a couple and a man or any, again, person of any gender has lost access to that, what's the impact on the relationship that you see?
Yeah. Lots of reactivity, projection, negative assumptions, not all the time, not wanting
Mhm.
to, say it's
Yeah.
guaranteed, but I think there's, if you're lacking the access of your emotions to reflect on how you're feeling in a certain state or situation and what it's connected to, and kind of helping yourself draw the through line of, okay, how did I get here? It helps with accountability. It helps with, yeah, owning your own emotions and being able to talk through it. But if you don't have that, then you're saying, you made me feel XYZ, how dare you? Um, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen that too, where, okay, there's the internal sense. It gives you more of a sense of, oh, this is what's actually happening for me, so that you're not projecting or lashing out. I've also seen, and I think, I don't know if this is a particular heterosexual dynamic with men and women, where as the male partner shuts down, the other partner, so
Hmm.
in oftentimes in heterosexual relationship with women, but I'm curious about your perspective from all different kinds of relationships. Like it seems like as one person shuts down, another person will tend to get more loud and
Yeah.
explosive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a way of getting the attention from the partner that's retreating. They feel like, okay, the other ways of me trying to get attention have not worked.
Not
And,
worked.
yeah, out of frustration. And they're saying, it's not that I want to do this, or, and it's not that they're making me do this, but I just have no other idea of how to connect with my partner or how to
Mm,
get this point across. Um, but the louder they're getting, the more the other person shuts down, and it just kind of continues and calcifies that cycle.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So maybe we could go into an example of, man or human is shutting down.
Mm,
How do you guide someone to actually work with that? Especially, it could be an individual, hey, I'm alone here, but tends to
mm,
be even more problematic, right? When there's somebody there in the relationship dynamic.
yeah. I try to get a sense of, well, first I try to help them get into their body, because if there's a shutdown or freak out, there's a disconnect from their body, or their nervous system is really taking over. And so there's, a variety of techniques that you can use. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where they name 5 things that they can see, 4 things that they can hear, 3 things that they can touch, 2 things that they can smell, and 1 thing that they can taste,
Mm.
and just kind of like slowly brings them down, or the breathing exercises. But then I also ask them, okay, what are you feeling? Just name it, and then we go from there. And then I help them kind of refine that a bit more.
Mhm.
Um, or sometimes the shutdown is because they don't want to say something that's going to harm their partner or harm
Right,
themselves
right.
or harm the relationship.
Yep.
Um, and depending on my experience with them, if I feel like they're actually not going to say something harmful, but it's more of just this really intense internal editor, I'll say, let's have the editor wait
Let's try
outside a
it.
little
Right.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Say it messy is another way I say it.
Hmm.
Um, but if there are guys, or people that will say shitty things to their partner when they're upset, then I'll be like, okay, maybe it's good that you're slowing down and you can choose your words slowly. And so I try
Hmm.
to kind of treat it as not, because we go to all or nothing when we go in those trauma responses. So like, how do
Yeah.
we kind of refine it a bit and get more specific about what you're experiencing?
I love that you're not seeing it as there's only one way, right? Because, right, there are people
Yeah.
who will say shitty things and not take responsibility. And that's a
Yeah.
different approach than someone who is holding back, terrified to say anything
Right.
that could be taken as hurtful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people are too afraid of their anger, and others are not afraid enough of their anger.
Yeah. 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 I was working with a couple recently, and the woman was very afraid of saying anything that would hurt him. And he was like, well, at this point, I'm basically already hurt. Like I would rather
Mm,
just know, right? I'd rather
yeah.
I just want to actually know what we can do and how to move through this. And so it's so
Right.
interesting too that we all have, I think at times we reach a point, or at least I know I've reached a point where I've been like, all right, I just want to know, wherever the chips are going to fall, let's just hear it flat
Totally.
out, straight truth, whatever. And like, then let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
But there are also times where it's super tender and vulnerable, and it's like, okay, can we take this slow? I don't know if I'm ready to hear, the thing
Totally.
I'm most afraid of. But I also, in my experience in working with people, I think, I'm curious about yours too. It seemed to me that oftentimes the things we say in our heads to ourselves are worse than what our partners say to us.
Worse than what our partners actually say to us?
That's been my experience when I'm working with couples, that like the thing that they're afraid of, the thing that someone's
Uh-huh.
afraid of is worse than the thing that actually comes
Oh, I see
through.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
your experience
totally.
too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's reminding me of kind of working with poly couples where they do want to meet the other partner.
Hmm.
And normally, or not normally, in some instances that I found, they want to meet the other partner just so they can add a human element to this other person and not fill in the blanks with all of their insecurities. So,
Fantasy.
like, yeah, this
Yeah.
is the person has all these wonderful things that I do not have,
Yes.
and I will be left,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Sometimes the reality actually kind of quells the fear.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going back to someone shutting down. One of the first things it sounds like you do is you help them get back into their body.
Hmm.
And then where do you go from there?
Then, yeah, help them get back into their body. And then I try to either ask them to talk about what's difficult about talking about the thing. And so then they can share, I don't want to hurt my partner or whatever it may be. Um, and then we work towards, just trying it out. I think the same with working on things that people feel shameful about. It's, choosing the things that um, they feel a little bit of shame around, but not too much, and then finding the right person to open up to about that and seeing what that experience is like, and then building up from there.
Yeah.
It's saying, okay, how can you couch it in a little bit of a gentle way and see how your partner reacts?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
see, what was their reaction like? Can we step it up a notch? And kind of like this incremental type thing, depending on their anxiety level, their comfort, their shutdown, level.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I'm just thinking about so many different, examples and clients and things and working recently with some couples on just saying things a little more kindly or with a little more compassion, right? Or just
Yeah.
that sense of, if we say something like, um, why does this keep happening? Or why are you doing it this way? It's a
Hmm.
very different way to say something than like, hey, I'm noticing this is happening and I'm curious about it, or I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand it, right? Like if we're coming from that place of I really want to understand you versus I'm feeling put upon or I'm feeling, annoyed that I have to deal with this, it comes out in a
Right.
very different way.
Totally. Yeah. And giving that kind of psychoeducation of like communication styles and tips and tricks and, um, the active listening exercises. Uh, yeah. I mean, that's, I think part of, I don't know about you, but I used to do high school drama and some
Mm,
college theater. And so that's where my like director's hat would come in and be like, no, no, say it a little bit differently like this, say it a little bit differently
nice.
like that. Try
Oh,
it
I
out.
like
Yeah.
that. That's a cool thing too. I mean, and for someone, if you can get to that place, I think this is very masterful. But if you can get to that place in your relationship where you take things less personally, I've
Yeah.
done this in my relationship or guided clients to be like, can you say that in a different way?
Yeah.
It doesn't quite feel good the way you're saying it right now, but I think there's something in there that you really want me to hear, but can't quite hear it in that package.
And sometimes I've even just verbalized the oof when one partner says something pretty intense. Like, wow, that is really intense what you just shared.
Uh-huh.
Like, I'll hold the emotion for the couple and have
Oh,
them talk about
yeah.
it. I'll really bring it to the surface because I mean, there's some things that people say to their partners that shouldn't fly and
Mhm.
shouldn't be left, unspoken.
How do
Um,
you help people understand the difference, like what should not be shared or how it should not be shared versus, what to share?
yeah, so I'm thinking more of like the delivery in term rather than the content. And
Yeah.
so for the delivery, it's the soft startup versus the harsh startup kind of thing with what the Gottmans talk about. But also, like you said, I'm noticing or kind of the slowly ramping up to sharing something,
Yeah.
speaking from your own experience, talking about your own emotions, not taking things personally, using positive assumptions. Um, yeah, those would be the things that I would be covering with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so a moment where someone says something that's intense may not even necessarily be about the content, but about how the content is shared.
Yeah. And I'll often talk about delivery. Like what were you thinking is a really good question. But if you
Mm.
ask it in a shaming way, like some parents do,
Right. What were you
it'll make you freeze.
thinking? Or what is,
You can
yeah.
totally, yeah,
Like, what's wrong with you?
yeah, yeah,
Versus, huh, okay, what were
yeah,
you thinking?
yeah. What was going through your mind? Yeah.
Yeah.
So just kind of like going through those differences, and talking about how, the nervous system really does escalate at these little micro responses from our partners to put us on
Yeah.
the defense. And so helping them understand that each of those little jabs, it's not just in a vacuum, but it's actually, yeah,
Yeah.
building up a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And a mountain that's like hard to I think of it like a, big pile of rocks, right? It's like it's hard to unearth yourself from there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what else do you have as you're working with someone, you're helping them get back into their body and they're, helping them understand that there's a difference between the delivery and the content, and how they're listening to each other. How else do you support people with that shutdown?
And then I encourage them to, ask follow-up questions of each other after they make this, for some of them it's a leap, for them, some of them it's a step towards more vulnerability. And so, asking some genuine questions like how did that land with you? How is that different from the times that I've said that in the past? Um, what are you, I think also having the partner reassure them that like I do want to hear these things from you. It
Yeah.
is actually really nice. It helps me feel closer to you. That type of reassurance is really helpful for the person that shuts down.
Hmm.
Um, individual work with that client to really dive deep into what may be some of the underlying issues or traumas or concerns that are impacting the shutdown can really help them, rewrite that narrative or realize that they're, hopefully or maybe in a different space than they were when the trauma response
When it
first
happened.
developed.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great. And yeah, the any kind of I'm thinking of, pitfalls or things that people might not know of, but you've, been doing this for a long time and you see people go through these shutdowns. Anything that you can give people the glimmer of hope or sense of how to get out of some of those hard spots.
Yeah. And I don't know why it's coming to mind right now, but like I also think about it's like I've talked a lot about, and we've talked a lot about shutdown in a really compassionate way, but also
Yeah.
thinking about like shutdown being used as a form of manipulation
Ah,
or weaponizing, where it's just kind of like the silent treatment, or, it's kind of stonewalling in a way where
yeah.
it's sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional, but it can be used as a strategy to get what you want because,
Right.
you know, some if you depending on the other person or partners, they may respond to that shutdown by just by fawning, by saying, I'll give you whatever you want.
Okay, fine.
I'll
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with I'm not gonna say the one. Um, but I've seen some examples of the fawning happening where I was like, wow, this needs to be intervened because this is just repeating the cycle very much.
Wow.
Um, and so, yeah, I think some of the pitfalls can be, um, focusing too much on the partner that shuts down or focusing too much on the partner that is reactive, that is more, loud and present.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I've made that mistake earlier on in my couples therapy career where I focused a little too much on the person that was more emotionally present and kind
Hmm.
of yeah, putting a more intention on that partner. And the other partner was, really suffering during that time of like, I'm not able to really speak my truth. I'm not able to, but it wasn't until I could talk to their individual therapist and get that, consultant to say, oh, they actually need more help stepping forward and opening
Yeah.
up a bit more rather than the other partner to slow down a bit.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it's about the dynamic, it's about the system that's at play. And for a lot of couples, they've been in that system, they've been in that flow for a long
A
time, and
long time.
it can be hard to, or just takes work to get out of it. And so naming that, say like, it's not going to be a quick fix. I know you want it to be, I get it, but we're also not going to help you go back to the marriage you once had. We're going to help you find a new way of relating, find a new way of
Right.
connecting with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your sense of, I mean, for couples who have been in those patterns for a long time, I think you and I both know it's not a quick fix. And every time we shift a dynamic, we have to face the parts of ourselves that were protecting ourselves with that dynamic.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, what do you see? It sounds like you say to couples, okay, it's not going to be a quick fix. What's your sense of what it will be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it involves, what's really challenging is you have those years of experience that are involved in those arguments, right?
Yeah.
And so Finding ways to update your script of noticing how they have changed, in what ways they have and have not changed. Where do you need to be more specific in your feedback, your criticisms, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
Um, Working on the active listening exercises so that they're slowing down, they're actually not trying to think about their response.
Hmm.
Um, Letting go of the ego, letting go of being right. Trying to help them focus on, okay, what are you actually trying to accomplish in this argument or in
Yeah.
this debate?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's lots of different ways that I like going about it to just, and a lot of the ways that I go about it is to provoke thought from them and to have conversations from them. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
Why do we keep having this
Yeah. Why do we
and
keep having
normalizing?
this? Right. Why do we keep having this conflict? Why do we keep having this dynamic and really getting underneath that? That's powerful too.
Yeah, and normalizing like all couples do it. All couples go through their moments.
Yeah. Was thinking about it recently where in the moments, and I've talked about this with clients too, it's like in the moments where I don't have the North Star of relationship as a path of growth, or, whether it's spiritual growth or just
Hmm.
psychological growth or emotional growth, everything feels so much more intense and,
Hmm.
harder. And then I'm like
Hmm.
trying to dig in my heels. And when I actually look at it through that lens of, oh, okay, I'm growing, I'm learning to love better, I'm learning to, be a better human. For me, it gives me a little bit of a sense of relief.
Yeah, right. Relief from the pressure or from the high stakes of like getting it right.
Right. Or it's like, okay, so yes, this is hard and there's going to be something good that comes of this.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you have any of those, any context or framing for people that help
Mm.
them, right, take a step back and look and not be like, oh fuck, this shouldn't be happening, or this is awful.
Yeah. I mean, this comes from, my Zen practice and also reading lots of Rumi, but just that
I love
this
Rumi.
is going to be, yeah, it's so beautiful. There is suffering. There is bad times. We're not going to avoid it. What we're trying to do is to avoid, adding more harm to ourselves and to our partner than what we're already going to experience in life.
Yeah.
And that the two of you or three of you or however many are, living together, but it also means you're suffering together. And how can you keep each other company while you're suffering together and while
Mm,
you're enjoying life together? Um, one thing that somewhat related, but like I learned this from another therapist who works with parents, and it's reminding their parents of how small their kid actually is.
mm.
Because I have a almost 3-year old, and his energy takes up the
So
whole
big.
space.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, right? They might be small, but they have big energy. Yeah.
But he's so tiny. Yeah, and I've worked with parents where I'm like, your kid is really tiny. You can't yell at them like that.
Yeah.
Or your partner is someone you're really close with. You can't yell at them like that. Those
Yeah.
type of like um, helping them find their values, helping them
Yeah.
find, like you said, their North Star,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
then just what the reality of human existence is like.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is so helpful. Anything else you want to add on shutdown or navigating shutdown?
There's lots of ways to go about it. I have my book and practice, and there's a ton of other therapists and coaches out there, but just really encouraging people and men out there to um, not accept that the shutdown is who they are, that to
Mm,
not identify with it too much, to
yeah.
maybe name that it's something that they're working through right now, and treating it as part of a process. But there's ways out of it. I used to shut down all the time, and I, was able to find some ways through it through a variety of methods. And so I think that, um, there's lots of hope out there for you to communicate
I
your
love
needs and
that.
your emotions
Yeah.
directly.
Well, great. Yeah, great that you have had that personal experience of shutting down and now not shutting down, that you can be an example of that. And um, I liked what you said too around not identifying, right? In my book, I have a chapter that's called You're Not Who You Think You Are, and Neither Is Your Partner.
I like
And right,
that.
that sense of we have these parts, we have these selves, we have these,
Yeah.
we have saboteur mind and one framing and sage mind, and we have all of these different ways of looking at ourselves. And if we really hold ourselves as I am this person, or I do shut down, and I'm, there's a
Yeah.
commitment to that that then just keeps it more solid as opposed to, okay, I'm stuck in this, but this isn't who I am. This isn't all of who
Right.
I am.
Right.
And I'm learning how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give yourself that grace. Yeah.
Yeah. And props to your book, the Mental Health Workbook for Men. This is an
Oh,
amazing
thank you.
book with all my little bookmarks. And, it's very, I love the simplicity. There's a depth and a simplicity of
For
it, right?
sure.
Of
Yeah.
it's
Thank
very
you.
usable and workable for men and also covers in a profound way, the basics of what do you need to actually be healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and one thing I'll mention is the publishers. So I sell some of the books on my website, but the publishers also sell the book on their place and where books are sold. And we both kind of shared notes. And it seems like more people are buying this book as a gift for the men in their lives than
Nice.
men are buying it for themselves,
Yeah.
which is great. But I can't wait until men start
Start
advocating for
actually
themselves.
buying it for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I highly encourage it.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So where can people find you and your book?
Yeah, so my book is available wherever books are sold, Target, Jeff's shop on Amazon, and Barnes and Noble, but also you
What's
can get
Jeff's
it
shop on Amazon?
Jeff Bezos. It's a bad
Oh,
joke about Amazon.
nice.
Uh, I'll workshop that joke.
Yeah. Okay.
And then my website, davidfkalili.com. And then my practice is rousetherapy.com, Rouse. And we also do some educational workshops at rouseacademy.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And thank
Yeah,
you
thank
for,
you.
yeah, all the work that you're doing.
Thank you as well. I love this podcast and the work that you're doing. Thank you,
Thank
Shannon.
you. Thanks. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word alive, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.